How Adesuwa survived in the forest. They buried her. But the earth did not keep her. It rained that night. Not small rain, the type that soaks the ground and makes the dead restless. That's the only reason she survived. I wasn't there in the forest when it happened. But years later, Queen Adesuwa told me the full story. And she made me promise to tell it properly. This is it. The guards tied her arms, her feet. They pushed her into the bush like a criminal. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She told me she knew no one would believe her, and she had no family left to fight for her name. When they reached the old Iroko tree, they dug a shallow grave. No ceremony. Just the queen's orders. They forced her in. She said she looked up and saw the sky one last time. And then darkness. They covered her. But they didn't bury her well. They thought she would die quickly, buried halfway, tired and weak. But that night, the heavens opened. Heavy rain. The kind that floods roads and tears down weak huts. It loosened the soil. The same soil meant to trap her, freed her. She said she drifted in and out of sleep. Thought she was dying. But sometime before dawn, she felt air again. Her face was above ground. Her arms were still tied, but the mud had softened the knots. She pulled, beat, fought, and somehow, she crawled out. Wet, bleeding, alone. She was lying. No strength. Just instinct. The forest was thick, dark. Full of snakes, spirits, and worse things. But then, she saw a figure. An old woman. And that's how she met the old woman. People in the village still argue about who the old woman was. Some say she was a witch. Others say a banished priestess. Some even say she wasn't human at all. But Adesuwa said this. She didn't speak much. But her eyes were older than anything I've seen. She called me Omo Odo, servant child, and said, the ones who buried you did not ask the earth for permission. That is why it rejected you. The old woman healed her with herbs. Fed her little food, just enough. But more than anything, she taught her. She taught her about power, not the type in crowns or palaces, but the kind that lives in silence. In survival. In truth. She taught her to read the wind. To listen when the trees stop whispering. To speak only when it matters. For 3 years, Adesuwa stayed in that forest. Learning. Waiting. She said she wanted revenge at first. Fire. Blood. But the old woman shook her head. No. You want justice. Justice is slower. But deeper. One day, the old woman gave her a small calabash with white stones inside. When you are ready, she said, take this back to the palace. Drop it at their gate. If the land accepts you, they will listen. If not, return here and forget them. So Adesuwa went. She walked back the same path they dragged her through. But this time, she was not afraid. Because the land accepted her. I asked her once if she ever went back to the forest. She said no. But she dreams of it sometimes. The woman. The fire. The rain. She said the forest made her who she is. Not the throne. Not the king. Not even the crown. Just survival.